It's a remarkable figure. Well done to get that sort of money to spend. But with government cuts, what's the outlook? It's everything seems to be getting chopped these days. I don't know what's your thoughts.
I think that's probably more me than Louise. I mean, look, we don't know where the budget's going. We know what our allocation is for this current financial year. We're obviously heading into some interesting times around public finances in general, and that's why there's quite a lot of focus on public service reform and other things as well. And obviously we've got a Scottish parliamentary election next May as well. So I mean, the question doesn't really have an obvious answer at the moment, John, but I suppose we're in a good place in terms of we're delivering quite a lot with funding that isn't just core Scottish Government funding, that we're bringing in other funding sources, which is going to be ever more key to us, I think, is to go and try and find other monies as well to try and bring in to do the things we need to do to meet the National Park Partnership Plan. So we'll certainly be focusing on trying to maintain at least our core funding, but a big focus for the staff group is to then go and find other funding to keep the amount of money coming to the Cairngorms to do things we want to do at the level we need.
Thank you very much. Questions from Eleanor McIntosh, followed by Peter Cosgrove and Fiona McLean. Eleanor.
It's terrific figures and just shows what the park is actually delivering, the number of projects that are going on. The thing that bothers me slightly is the 2030 programme, which is a 5-year programme, and we seem to have made a lot of organisational changes to deliver that programme, which I understand. But at the end of the 5 year, what happens to the staff that are involved currently? And are we bearing that in mind as we change our systems at the moment? What the impact of those changes will be when we're no longer delivering the 2030 programme. I'm not sure it's the right time to ask that question, but I think we should have an eye open to that.
It's a pertinent question, Eleanor. I'll ask Grant Moore to pick up on that before going to Louise. Grant.
Yeah, so I think the first bit is that I think quite a lot of the changes that we've made in processes within the organisation for Cairngorms 2030 are good for us as an organisation, full stop. So that we've got better ways of doing things across lots of different, on the procurement side, on the finance side of things, on other things. We've modernised our entire approach to all of that, which will stand us in good stead, Cairngorms 2030 or not. In terms of the staffing side, I'll hand over to David on that in terms of the just the approach that we're taking around workforce management, because it's a key issue as we move towards. I know it may sound that we're only in year 2, but as we move towards the end of Cairngorms 2030, it's not as far away as you think, and we need to make sure we've got that workforce management in place. So there's work that's going on this year, which will then, I think, flow into that, Eleanor, which will then be coming back to the board with around how we deal with that.
David Cameron, Deputy CEO.
Yep, thank you. And Eleanor, I think it's a very good time actually to ask the question. We do need to start to have a very forward look in terms of where we're at, recognising that there's a very positive delivery position that we have at the moment, but recognising that a lot of that is time limited. So to build on the information that Grant's already said, we're looking at a workforce management strategy. We already have one, but it's time to renew that and revise it over the course of the next few months. I'll be planning to bring the initial draft of that workforce management strategy to our resources committee at some point over the next half of the year, and that's got very much a kind of 5-year look. It's looking very much at how do we go through our workforce management over the remaining period now of the Cairngorms 2030 programme and thereafter. And elements that we're already building into that is that as a standard, when we are looking at vacancies coming up in the organisation, our baseline position is to look at a fixed term 3-year contract so that we can start to build in some flexibility into the staff complement in the here and now, that we've then got something to work with in 3 years hence when Cairngorms 2030 starts to come to its conclusion. And also building the workforce management plans in tandem with, to come back to John's point that he's already made, we've got some very, very broad guidelines that we work within with Scottish Government around what to look at in terms of 5-year projections on financial position. So I'm looking to dovetail those two things together and give the Resources Committee, and then flowing on from that into the board, a kind of sense of what does the position look like over the next 4 to 5 years, and what are our strategies and our operational approaches to making sure that the organisation can manage back into the shape and structure that it needs to be after the end of Cairngorms 2030, as well as delivering. Hope that's answered that.
Thank you, David, for covering those points. Questions from Peter Cosgrove, Fiona McLean, followed by Bill Lobbin. Peter.
Thank you. First of all, I welcome the ambitious plan and the large budget, but I picked up on your point about looking at the breadth of work, and if I can sort of dive down a little bit, but I'm not expecting you to be able to answer this. It may be Grant or Andy at a future bit. It was I looked at paper 2, Annex 4, and under the ecological restoration, and I know there's a budget aside for that. And I noted that the freshwater ecological restoration was going to be focused primarily on riparian planting and large woody structures. With my sort of other work hat on, one of the best ways of doing ecological restoration is to remove barriers and things in rivers, and I know that partners are working strongly on that, and I wonder if this could be picked up and we could find out within catchments how many artificial barriers are being removed. Basically, Marine Scotland did an assessment on all the catchments, and so partners are now working towards delivering that, which is an important element. And I just wonder if that can be built into someone's forward work programme so that we can see what progress is being made on that.
Grant.
Yeah, I mean, I can take that away. Yeah, I'll have a look at the information as to what the different catchment groups are doing on the D, on the ESC, and on the SPAY, and see what they're doing around removal of barriers. I mean, I know it is part of the work programme, so I'll be able to pull that information out, and I'll send that around the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, point taken. Many barriers, very significant ones, have been removed, but it is work in progress. Fiona McLean, followed by Bill Lobbin. Fiona.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just think it's absolutely fantastic, the amount of money that is coming into the park. It is making a huge difference to the people who live here as well as people who are visiting, and I think we have to acknowledge that, absolutely. I also want to say that I read a number of these budget reports and hear presentations, and as ever, sometimes they can be so impenetrable, but this is one where I can really understand. It's so clear, so well explained. So thank you for that. Really appreciate that. I'd like to just pick up on what Eleanor raised. I think it's a really important point, because you get so caught up in what you're doing that you forget about, what's going to happen at the end of the initiative. And I think, as we know, it's absolutely key for NLHF that what we're doing is as sustainable as possible. And we need to be considering at this early stage sources of funding to take us forward, so that to ensure that we don't contract to such an extent that we're no longer able to deliver and continue what we've achieved. I think it's really important that, we're not going backwards, we're going to go forwards. So I'm just hoping that we are thinking ahead. We've got this fantastic pot of money at the moment, but what happens when we finish that?
I think, yes, legacy is a critical point in the entire programme, but Grant, you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I mean, just to say, yes, we are looking at what the next thing is post Cairngorms 2030 now, and where we can go and look for other funding to then deliver what will be in the next National Park Partnership Plan when we develop that in 26, 27. So yeah, it's a key part of us is to try and make sure that we've then got other funding sources that are coming in, and there are still lots of opportunities out there for us to go and find funding to do things, and we'll just have to, that's one of the key things for us overall. But I do think the legacy thing is an interesting one. So just to give a quick answer on, so if you look at the Alzheimer's Centre that we've been working with, the Dementia Centre at Badoosh, so we've already got a legacy from that actually, which is that they just opened a second one in Edinburgh, and the whole point of doing Cairngorms 2030 was to trial things, see if it works, and then hopefully spread stuff across Scotland. And the fact that well, after a couple of years of working in the Cairngorms, they decided to take the plunge and open one in just south of Edinburgh is a good thing, and it's the sort of thing that we're looking to see on other projects as well, as how that legacy works. So it's not just, I suppose, the financial legacy for us and looking for more money to do things in the Cairngorms, but it's also that thing of doing things in the Cairngorms that then help Scotland overall to do better things across the place.
Thank you. Bill Lobbin.
Yeah, it's really important that we have a sufficient staff complement to deliver the 2030 programme. But by the time we get further into the programme, I presume there is some level of staff churn which will assist with that. So certainly, partially, it needs to, we should be able to compensate for that. But also, if we get to the stage whereby we're letting the tail wag the dog and we're looking for finance and then we do things, should it not be the opposite way around? We're looking for finance to do the things that we want to deliver, rather than just, like many organisations, they run out of one project and then they look for money and then they think of another project.
I think that's where the park plan comes in that we've got a plan, that's what we're looking to deliver. So we're looking for funding to do the things that have been agreed by the board. And as I said, the next park plan is weirdly not that far away. And so, again, we'll have another good 5-year plan, which allows us to then go and find the funding to do those things. But we're not looking for funding pots to then go and do something. It's to say, this is what we want to do, and then we go and find the funding to do it. And actually, one of the key strengths in the national park is having the park plan, which funders like having the certainty of what's happening over the next 5 years.
If I can come in as well, Bill, just to give you assurance that the way I'm looking at the workforce management strategy and the development of it is oriented exactly as you've described. So it's taking the current position, it's taking our current delivery objectives, doing the best we can to work out how do we have a flexible approach to managing the staff complement that we can currently anticipate. And then, just as you say, if we find funding externally that helps us continue to do things that we want to do and we've agreed to do through our corporate plan and our national park plan, we can flex that workforce management strategy again to accommodate that. So that's very much the approach I think we need to take.
Thank you. Duncan Miller.
Thanks. Yeah. Just first, I just want to say that I share everyone's point on regarding staffing. Mine's slightly different. Just on the species management regarding geese, happy to see that that's being continued, but I was just wondering if there's possibly scope to fund it for going further up the Spey as well, because I know that they're also having issues, not just down kind of Strathspey and up the Dillon and up Badenoch and Lagan and things.
Front.
I don't know off the top of my head, Duncan, but I'll look into it and I'll get an answer on that one. Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments? Russell Jones.
Yeah, thanks. Just like to record thanks to Louise, not only for this report, but her work throughout the year and at the Resources Committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell, and I think the whole board would endorse those comments. Any other questions or comments on the paper? None, in which case, is the board content to approve the Cairngorms National Park Authority's budget and operational plan for 2025-26 as set out in this paper, confirming that we have considered the impact of the budget and operational plan on the strategic risk register and any amendments arising. So yes, thank you very much, board, and thank you again, Louise. Moving on to item 7, paper 3, consultation response to the Highland Council visitor levy proposal. So again, this is noting that the Standards Commission have agreed a dispensation for all members covering this item. This is for decision. The board is being asked to agree and approve the Park Authority response to Highland Council's visitor levy consultation. The paper is introduced by Gavin Miles, Director of Planning and Place, and Heather Trench, Sustainable Tourism Officer.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Yes, everybody, I think this is a reasonably straightforward thing. I think you probably remember that last year in 2024, Scottish Parliament published the legislation that allowed local authorities to introduce visitor levies. Highland Council are one of the first of the local authorities looking to introduce a visitor levy. And They, along with Edinburgh and a couple of others, are, I suppose, leading the way of the councils looking at this. So they agreed to publish and consult on a draft visitor levy proposal, or the outline proposal, back in November of last year, and the consultation is going to end very soon, at the end of this month. The proposal is relatively simple to understand, but it's also quite bare on some of the detail, and a lot of the businesses are a little bit worried about that. But in effect, there will be a 5% charge on overnight accommodation, all overnight accommodation in Highland Council, apart from the exceptions that are set out in the paper. And that money will be used by the council and reinvested to help deliver their own sustainable tourism strategy for Highland. Now, there's further detail that will be needed in terms of exactly what that money will be spent on. And there are a lot of, I suppose, small technical and mechanical things around the way that money will be collected that a lot of businesses have a lot of concern about, particularly in relation to smaller businesses and pushing them over VAT thresholds. But the National Park and the National Park Authority are already formally tied into the visitor levy work. So the visitor levy must be spent with regard to the National Park Partnership Plan. The National Park Authority must be consulted, involved in some ways in the way that the levy is delivered, and we expect to be involved in some way in the way that levy proceeds are spent within the national park. And we're obviously in a very good place because we have the sustainable tourism strategy, we've got our own visitor infrastructure improvement plan and other plans that are about spending on infrastructure that relates to the impact of visitors within the national park. So our response is broadly supportive, but we also look for the council to just do a little bit more work on the economic impact of the proposals, particularly on the smaller businesses as they go forward to the next stage.
Thank you very much. We move on to questions and comments, and first Bill Lobbin, followed by Jiva Blackett. Bill.
Just to make it clear, no decision has been taken by Highland Council as to whether we will progress with a visitor levy or not, and no decision has been taken, if we do make that decision, as to what the final form of that visitor levy may be. The consultation, as Gavin has just said, only finishes in a few days' time, and the simple fact of life is that will be debated quite extensively, and then a final paper will be produced with the council's proposals to proceed or not. So it's at the moment it's a little bit preemptive. So I think we need to bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the clarification. And Jiva Blackett.
Yeah, thank you. Aberdeenshire Council is not far behind, and our officers are now aware of this. Actually, Gavin, you pointed to something that is of huge concern, and that is the impact of collecting this money and it being VAT. And so this isn't specific to Highland Council, but pushing people over the limit, because we're already seeing B&Bs in particular not renting out rooms for quite lengthy periods because they don't want to go over the VAT threshold. And my concern is that we will see a decrease in room numbers if this does count towards VAT. It seems very unfair if it does.
Yeah, so that point is being very strongly made by the accommodation industry and business associations and the business sector in general about that point. And obviously the local authorities are looking at this, are looking at ways of making the burden as light as possible. But the way that the levy is treated in tax terms and in VAT terms makes it very difficult to make it more easy. So there are opportunities for councils to modify the scheme to change it doesn't have to apply to all businesses. They can make exceptions, and they may want to look at that as they go forward with their proposals.
Thank you very much. We have questions from Jiva Blackett, John Kirk, Jackie Brereton, Eleanor McIntosh, Steve Micklewright. I know Bill wants to come back. Jiva.
I've had my turn.
Sorry, it's John next. Thank you.
Yeah, agreeing with Jiva, I was just going to raise the same point about the VAT. Surely it could be a net zero levy, because it's not it's not part of your business. Surely it needs a wee bit of government action on that one. It's maybe something the park could put pressure on the government to get it to be at a zero rate. And
I was just going to say, I think that there are ongoing discussions between Scottish Government and HMRC around that, but it's a UK government position on VAT, not a Scottish Government position on VAT.
Could I come in specifically on that point?
Yes, Bill.
If you look at the Manchester tourism levy, which, okay, is a fixed amount per night, it is not included in their VAT turnover figures. And that makes the decision in Scotland perverse, to be honest. So if you run a hotel in Manchester and you charge the £1 a night or whatever it is, that's not included in your VAT turnover.
Thank you. Jackie Brereton.
Thanks, Convener. I think we're being asked to approve this response as the response going back to Highland Council from the Park Authority, and I think from my perspective it's as good a response as we can make at this point. And I really welcome the fact that we're emphasising the need to do more economic impact assessment work in order to make sure that there's not, if it does go through, because as Bill acknowledges, there's still a lot of that's not been decided yet. But at the moment, the way it's structured, there's a disproportionate disadvantage to smaller accommodation providers, not just around the VAT issue. But if you think even in terms of charging, every time they take the levy, they're having to pay a percentage on card payments, for example. And administering this for a small bed and breakfast or whatever small accommodation sites compared to large providers, I think is a huge disadvantage. So hopefully with the authorities' role on the forum, we can represent the business's interests on that going forward. But I think as a response, it's probably as good as we can do at the moment, and I think we're up against it time-wise anyway. Does this?
Yes, it would need to go back next week. Yeah. Could I just add to that, and just to say that, yeah, there's a slight error. We're on the reference group just now. There is no forum yet established, but we will say that we would like to be involved in the forum when it is established.
Thank you very much. Questions from Eleanor McIntosh, Steve Nicholwright and Paul Gibb. Eleanor.
Yeah, I must admit, I feel we're responding to something that is so as yet undefined. It's quite difficult to get your head round. But from what Bill said at the start, does that mean, Bill, if I can ask you, once it's gone through all the protocols within the council, did you mean it would be formed and the proposal would be formed into a paper that would be back out for consultation, or what did I take from that?
But that's a potential option, but that would be a decision for the council to make. But it's a likely outcome.
Sorry, can I come back? Yeah. If that was the case, could we add something in at this late date that we would like to see that coming back out for consultation, final?
Well, I think whether or not the council have consulted on a proposal, they can choose to go ahead with it after analysing that, or they can choose to modify it substantially and reconsult, which seems like quite a likely outcome, but it's not guaranteed. And I'm not sure that, and they don't have to do that either.
I understand all that, but I just wondered from a park's point of view, considering the park is really quite a smallish bit of the whole Highland area, it would be quite nice to have a look at the final proposal from the council before we actually said, yeah, we're behind this.
I'm sure. Ellen, I'm sure we can add in a line that says something like, if there are significant changes proposed by Highland Council to the current scheme, we would welcome a reconsultation. That's something that people are happy with.
I think we'd want to do that, definitely.
Yeah, we can add in that line.
Steve Nicholwright, followed by Paul Gibb. Steve.
Yeah, just a quick one. Did you consider giving feedback about the 5% levy versus a flat rate? Because I know that's one of the things that's coming out quite strongly from a lot of tourism operators, that, you know, a flat rate feels more manageable for them. So
we haven't considered that, because this is a levy across the whole of Highland, and obviously fixed rates versus percentages were also debated when the legislation went through Parliament, and the council have no choice in that matter just now. So the levy legislation sets it up as a percentage. So yes, there are people lobbying Scottish Government looking to change that, and the council wrote to the government as well looking to change that to be a fixed fee. But we're working within the legislation, the council are working within the legislation available just now.
Thanks. And just on that point, to go back to Bill Lubben.
Yeah, Steve, the council's original proposal was for a flexible fixed fee, and the Scottish Government have decided via the legislation that it will be a percentage. It doesn't define what the percentage is, and the council has again written to them based on the number of responses that we've had, to again ask them to reconsider and make it a variable fixed fee. But that's a matter for Scottish Government, and if the National Park wish to influence that, then as Gavin said, it should be a matter of attempting to influence Scottish Government.
Steve, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, so thanks, Bill. That's where I was headed. So I'm asking, why isn't the National Park engaging with that sort of debate as well? If Highland are also wanting some flexibility, why aren't we supporting that?
Well, I suppose we haven't been asked to do that, and Scottish Government aren't asking us for our opinion on legislation that has already been passed. So, I mean, it is open to the board to write to Scottish Government on that matter, but we, as the Park Authority, haven't done any appraisal of the pros and cons of fixed sums, percentages across, you know, within the national park, nor across Scotland. So we have, I suppose, limited evidence on which to base out anything we say.
Yeah, but the park is here to support rural business and to support, you know, make the tourism sector work well. That's one of the key things that the park needs to do. So I don't know what feedback the park's gained from tourism operators, but I would urge the park to listen to what other people are saying and get a view on it, even if it's not through this consultation, through some other means.
Yeah. I suppose there are differing views on that part around it. I suppose what we're being asked to respond to the Highland Council proposal in this consultation, which is what we've done. On the actual what the levy should be, the people with the information around that and is mainly sitting with Highland Council and what they're doing. I'm not sure that we're in a position to say that it should be 5%, 7%, 3%, 4%, or it should be a flat fee. I'm not sure that's something where the Park Authority has particular expertise to answer that question on that. But if it's felt that the board would like to think more about that, I'm not sure it's for this consultation response, but it's certainly something that we can then talk to Scottish Government about in due course if that's something. But as Bill said, it's set in legislation at the moment. So unless there's a will to change the legislation, there's no wiggle room on this in terms of that. And I don't think we're the best place to say what the percentage should be for the Highlands on the visitor levy side of things.
Thank you very much. Paul Gibb, followed by Bill Lubben, if he wants to come back again, and Chief Blackett. Paul.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, perhaps I haven't consulted widely enough, but I've not been approached by a single business that expressed a view that the way to address a shortfall in funding for tourist infrastructure is to introduce a whole new tax. However, I have heard from a few residents who have expressed a view that it might be a good idea. I think taxes change behaviour. So last summer I went to Gibraltar on holiday with my family for 10 days, and on arrival at the hotel I was advised there was a tourist tax. It was £3 per night per person. It was an unwelcome surprise because, in spite of much correspondence with the hotel before arriving, there was no discussion of this, and it was £120 that I hadn't budgeted for. And I understood it was not a tax that the hotel had introduced, but its imposition did change my behaviour. Instead of taking breakfast in the hotel each morning, I went to the bakery and the supermarket, bought breakfast, ate it on the balcony with my family. Breakfast cost me £20. For the week, my spend on breakfast, including tourist tax, was £320. That was quite a bit less than the £15 per night per head for breakfast. And had we chosen to eat each morning in the hotel, it would have been a £600 spend, which was a loss of income to the hotel. And I saved £280. This visitor levy, I think, will change behaviour. If introduced in Highland only, it will result in visitors choosing to stay in other council areas. If it's introduced in all 5 council areas, it might discourage visitors from visiting the park. And those that may visit may adjust their spending to compensate for having to pay a tax. Or they may seek to avoid paying tax and make different choices, such as camper vans parking up in residential or other locations to avoid a levy. And if introduced across the whole of Scotland, visitors may well go elsewhere. It's not been an easy time for tourist-focused businesses. Many are still recovering post-COVID, replenishing their reserves so that they can expand their business or build a buffer to help them get through the winter months. There is also the impact of the limited business rates relief that they get, the recent increase in the minimum wage and the additional of the employer's national insurance. These operational costs will be passed on to visitors, and the visitor levy only compounds this. There's an administrative cost, potentially an upgrade to software subscriptions, and time speaking to an accountant to advise on how to correctly account for and pay the levy. In some cases, the visitor levy, if it cannot be accounted for as a separate levy, might add to the company's total revenue, which has been mentioned, and push them over the VAT threshold. And where a VAT is imposed on the company, VAT is charged on the visitor levy. There's a tax on the tax, which is crazy. The cost and the administration of the levy itself will be passed on to the visitors, adding to the cost of the experience, making those areas that implement it less attractive to visitors than their neighbouring areas, and it may cause some to reconsider visiting Highland and the National Park. When it comes to spending the visitor levy, the costs incurred by the council for running the scheme can be deducted from the funds raised by the visitor levy. There is no guarantee that the funds raised in a specific geographical area will be spent in that area. Funds raised in the park could be spent elsewhere in Highland. Expenditure is a decision for the council following input from local community and representatives. And in most walks of life, those with the loudest voice and the greatest influence will receive the funds. It's estimated that a 5% visitor levy would raise £10 million. After the council's administration fees have been deducted, will it raise 10 million? Will there be an equitable distribution of the funds for investment? Councils are under significant pressure. Perhaps Holyrood should focus on solutions that better adjust general taxation rather than resort to imposing these new taxes. Businesses already pay VAT, corporation tax and business rates. We are a wealthy country, but we do seem to make some bizarre and sometimes careless decisions on how we spend the taxes that we raise. I cannot support the recommendation because I do not support this tax. I would put forward an amendment.
Sorry, Paul, can I ask, have you got much more to go?
Not much more, no. I would put forward an amendment to propose that the board are not in support of implementing a visitor levy and that we, at the very least, wait. The council observes for a period of 3 years the impact and outcomes of the levy as implemented in Edinburgh, in Manchester and in Wales, and that they then consider whether it's a success, there be no negative or adverse impacts on business, and that Highland Council adopt a strategy of being a fast follower rather than an early adopter.
Thank you very much. Could I have Bill Lobbin to come back? Yep. Thank you very much. Shiva Blackett.
Yeah, I'll be very brief because actually the visitors use our roads, they use our waste. I would quite welcome some money putting the potholes back in order. But what I really wanted to say was picking up on what Bill said about the Manchester levy not being in the back threshold. What are we going to do to speak to Scottish Government about that inequity that we will have to pay, whereas in England they're excused when it is an England thing, when, you know, it's a reserve matter, VAT. Am I making sense?
Thank you. So, Chief, I can ask Grant to come back on Jiva's point and to Paul's submission.
Yeah, Jiva, on that point, I mean, the government is well aware on the VAT point, and is that conversation is ongoing at present, and it definitely is one of the top things. I know there's been back and forth a lot with HMRC on this, in a desire to try and find a solution to that.
Could you keep us briefed on that, sort of, because there will be other councils coming forward with it? Thank you.
Absolutely. The only thing I'd say about the visitor levy overall, and obviously lots of people get different points around this, is that the potential to allow long-term investment in the visitor economy that will also benefit local residents, I think, is quite extensive from a visitor levy, however it is implemented going forward. And if you look at the things that people are most upset about in terms of over tourism and that word, and the need for rangers in certain places or infrastructure in certain places, a visitor levy gives you the certainty over a long period of time to be able to do that, to be able to borrow against it, to be able to do lots of innovative things, and also in somewhere like Highland to swing money into different places at different times, which will allow bigger projects to be potentially funded as well. So I think it has a lot of upsides. I would also say that we're one of the few countries without a tourism tax in some place, and whether you go to somewhere like Amsterdam, where you've got a 7% local tax and I think a 5% national tax on top of any visitor night that you have in those sort of cities. Barcelona, I think, are heading towards 20%, I think is the last figure I heard for that, and other places. I'm not sure there's a great amount of evidence that shows that there's a swing in visitor behaviour around tourism taxes in Europe and how they're used. So, I mean, in terms of I think the visitor levy has a lot of potential benefits, and I suppose the interesting thing for me was that at the CBP event in Boat of Garton, whilst there was quite a lot of discussion around some of the technicalities around it, so in terms of how is it levied, what's it on, the VAT threshold, and all the rest of it, there was also quite a lot of support from businesses about actually having a levy to deal with some of these issues. So there wasn't a lot of negativity coming from the businesses around the concept of levy. It was just more about what it exactly is and how it's levied in the future, which I think is the bit that Highland Council are going to go have a good think about in terms of when they get all the consultation responses from everyone across. I don't know how many thousand they'll get, but probably quite a lot from all the different businesses and others across Highland area.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Derek Ross.
Sorry. Clearly, what we're looking at here is Highland Council have made a decision, a democratic decision, to go for consultation on the levy. We've been asked to put in a response to that. We've not been asked to debate visitor levies. There's been a lot of debate around this table today about, visitor levies, but we are not being asked to do that. That debate has taken place at Highland Council. Highland Council have gone for a consultation and have asked us to respond to the consultation. So that's what we have in front of us here today.
Thank you, Derek. Any other questions or comments? None. We have a proposal of an amendment from Paul. I'll ask Paul now to articulate that amendment briefly, please.
Before we go further, can we establish whether there is a seconder to that amendment? Because any proposal to move forward with an amendment needs a second.
Indeed, yes, but I would like Paul first to clarify what that amendment is. So, Paul, if you could please.
Yep, so my amendment, and I do seek a seconder, and I may not have one, is to propose that the board are not supportive of implementing a visitor levy, and that at the very least we encourage the council to observe for a period of 3 years the impact of and outcomes of a visitor levy implemented in Edinburgh and in Manchester and Wales, and that they then consider whether it is a success and that there have been no negative or adverse impacts on business, and that they, Highland Council, adopt a strategy of being a fast follower rather than an early adopter.
Thank you, Paul. Does that amendment have a seconder? None. In which case, is the board content to agree and approve the Park Authority response to Highland Council's visitor levy consultation?
Chair, can it be noted that it's not unanimous? Sorry? Can it be noted that it's not unanimous?
That's part of the record of the meeting. Thank you. We move on now to item 9. Item 8, paper 4, local development plan delivery programme. So this is also for decision. The board is being asked to note the local development plan delivery programme 2025 and approve its submission to Scottish ministers. The paper is introduced by Dan Harris, Planning Manager, and Jeff Pyra, Senior Planning Officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. The first thing to say is that it is a statutory requirement for each local planning authority to update their action programme for its existing local development plan and publish it as a delivery programme. And Scottish ministers have required this to take place by 31st of March 2025, hence the reason for this board paper. The programme is it's an important part of the Scottish Government's new planning regime, and a key difference compared with the action programmes that accompanied local development plans previously is a focus on outcomes rather than actions, and the need to present a deliverable housing land pipeline which sets out the sequencing for the construction of housing sites allocated by the local development plan. So we've sought to create a document which is clear and accessible as it can be, while still containing the detailed planning information it has to do. And our delivery programme is divided into 6 sections. Section 2 provides the delivery pipeline. We've colour-coded it to reflect progress by categorising each allocated site as either under construction, with permission, or no permission. And you'll see in the paper that the summary table shows that 260 dwellings were built on these allocated sites between April 2020, when the local development plan was adopted, and 2023, the first 3 years of the plan. That equates to 87 dwellings per year when compared with the adopted local development plan housing land requirement. It shows that we're on track to deliver. So that's the sort of thing this document is trying to do, to help people understand where we are and how we're doing. Section 3 provides a summary of affordable housing and financial contributions that we have secured through planning permissions. Usefully highlights what planning gain we've achieved, and again, that's another way it really helps to make that clear to people. It can get a bit lost amongst all the planning permissions otherwise. Section 6 provides a greater level of detail on each of the allocated sites in each of the settlements, including details of planning permissions and anticipated delivery timescales. This section includes information provided by landowners and developers to provide as much update as we can. In order to create the document, we've sought the views, advice, and the updates of the 5 local authorities, the key agencies, other stakeholders, landowners, and developers. We've had a positive response, and the comments received, I feel, have genuinely helped me to improve the document and create the final version that you see today for approval. A list of those who have responded to this focus engagement is included, and that's in Annex 2 of the paper. I'm happy to take any questions on the content.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Questions or comments on the paper? Kenny Deans.
Thanks, Jeff. It's a really interesting and very detailed and helpful paper. Just a little question. In terms of financial contributions and community gain, some of it's very detailed and very specific, and some of it's not detailed at all. Is that because there is no information, or is it because, or what would the reason for that be? And although sometimes it talks about a contribution, it doesn't actually state the figure, and I think that would be a helpful thing. I know in the document we're talking about doing slightly better with our delivery partners on how that's managed. Can you comment on that, please, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, that table reflects the information that's publicly available. Sometimes that information is more detailed at planning permission stage than at others, and that's why that level is such as it is. But you're right, I think we should try and improve that in the future, what's available, and make it more consistent.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the paper? Bill Lobbin.
Just one comment, Sandy. You know, obviously you've had, or we're dealing with all the public agencies, the councils, etc., etc. And yet again, you see a response from Nature Scotland, no comment to make. On something as important as this, no comment to make. It's beyond me.
Thanks for the observation, Bill. Any other comments or questions on the paper? None, in which case is the board content to note the Local Development Plan Delivery Programme 2025 and approve its submission to Scottish Ministers? Thank you very much. Moving now on to item 9, paper 5, Sustainable Tourism Action Plan Update. So this is for information. And the board is being asked to note progress in delivery of the Sustainable Tourism Action Plan 2022 to 27. It's introduced by Heather Trench, Sustainable Tourism Officer, and Gavin Miles, Director of Planning and Place. Heather.
Yes, thanks, Andy. This is the second annual update of the Sustainable Tourism Action Plan. We do a sort of an annual update to keep a board abreast of what delivery is taking place and also to keep a record for Europark when it comes to re-accreditation in 5 years' time of the European Charter for Sustainable Tourism. As with the National Park Partnership Plan, this is a partnership delivery. So what you'll see within the annex, which contains the actions within the Tourism Action Plan, is partly Park Authority delivery, but also from a range of partners. That is driven largely by the Cairngorms Tourism Partnership. Looking ahead to later on this year, as well as an annual update, we also do a mid-term review. And that will be an opportunity to look at the actions themselves and to amend some of those in light of changing priorities, because things within the visitor economy, as we've just been discussing, can change pretty quickly. So that will come back later this year. Helpfully, in terms of data, we'll have quite a lot of information to inform that as well, because I think you've already seen some of the findings from the recent residents survey. The visitor survey is still running, but will come to an end in the next month or so. And so we'll be reporting on that over the summer, and that will all feed into that mid-term review. But what's in front of you in the meantime is delivery by us and a range of partners over the last year.
Thank you very much, Heather. Questions or comments on the paper? There being none, is the board content to note progress in delivery of the Sustainable Tourism Action Plan 2022-27? Thank you very much, and thank you, Heather. Moving to item 10, paper 6, Public Sector Equality Duty Report. By way of background, the Cairngorms National Park Authority, as a listed public authority, is required to... Sorry?
You just need to get Kate.
Oh, sorry, we need the officer in the room. We will pause for a moment.
I thought it was maybe something you'd said.
So, thank you, members, and thank you. We now have the relevant officer in the room. And by way of background, the Cairngorms National Park Authority, as a listed public authority, is required to meet the public sector equality duty. There are a number of obligations under this duty, including a requirement to report on mainstreaming the equality duty and to publish progress on the delivery of a variety of responsibilities. This report details the significant work that's been delivered to meet those obligations and to deliver the authority's vision of a park for all. This paper is for information. The board is being asked to note the report and Annex 1 and note the achievements in our work on equalities. It's introduced by Kate Christie, Head of Organisational Development. Kate.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for being a bit puffed. I didn't expect to be up so quickly. Firstly, I would like to say a very big thank you to you all for reading such a lengthy paper, which I'm sure you have all read. We did try to keep the report as succinct and concise as we could, but when collating into this one document all the work that is happening throughout the organisation, we quickly realised that a short report would just not do justice to all the great work that is taking place. I'm not going to repeat here our statutory obligations to meet the public sector equality duty that is set out in the paper, but I would like to say that the organisation has really embraced its equalities obligations over the last 4 years with an enhanced commitment to being a fully inclusive organisation, both for its staff and prospective staff, but also for our stakeholders, which includes our visitors and residents. In collating this report, I've had to rely on a number of staff to provide updates. But this year more than ever, and I have been doing this for quite a few years now, it hasn't been so much a case of me having to chase my colleagues, as colleagues volunteering their updates with a keenness that I actually haven't ever seen before, which suggests to me that as an organisation, equalities is fully part and parcel of what we do and how we do it and how we think. And our staff know this and welcome it. And it's no longer a checklist of simply meeting our legal obligations. We want to do more than that. And we want to do more than what we're obliged to do. And we genuinely see our equalities work as an integral part of achieving our aspiration to be the best small public sector organisation in Scotland. I have to give credit to, firstly, the external Equality Advisory Panel, and I have to share that many of our partner organisations see this panel as an excellent example of good practice and are really quite jealous of this resource that we have established. I also need to give credit to the Staff Equality Advocacy Group, who are extremely proactive in ensuring that we are leading the way as an organisation with our equalities policy development and with removing barriers for underrepresented groups to enable them to participate fully in our work. You will note in the report that there have been a number of significant achievements over the reporting period, and on the whole, we have delivered the outcomes that we established 4 years ago. We have identified 3 outcomes for the next 4 years. They are ambitious but achievable, and these have involved input from a variety of sources, including staff and the underrepresented groups through the Equality Advisory Panel. I'm going to conclude by saying that I think it's important, valid and essential that we are required and able to report so fully on our equalities work, particularly at a time when EDI work in general is under so much scrutiny internationally. And I'm actually very proud to be part of an organisation that takes equality so seriously and is not afraid to deliver bold and pioneering initiatives to reduce the barriers for underrepresented groups and to lead the way on diversity and inclusion. And that's all I was going to say, but happy to take questions.
Thank you, Kate. Questions and comments first from Fiona McLean, followed by Derek Ross. Fiona.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kate. And you've taken some of the words out of my mouth, but I'll just say what I want to say. As both you and our convener have said, we have to meet our duties under the legislation, and I would say we are absolutely excelling at it. And the proof is, as you say, that I agree absolutely that other public sector bodies look to us to be leaders at this, and they really do. You know, for example, presenting our menopause policy at the Holyrood Conference, outstanding. This work, all our equalities work, goes through a considerable amount of consultation. And we've built exceptionally good and important relationships, which are significant if we are to meet our priority outcome for Cairngorms 2030. A wider range of people will be involved in heritage, and the NLHF will be looking to see that we are actually achieving that. And talking about achievements, wow, the list of achievements there. We are a small organisation. We don't have a designated equalities officer like some other public sector organisation, and yet look at what we have achieved. It is outstanding. We take advice from our Equalities Advisory Panel, and I noted that a member of that panel wrote the foreword to one of the forewords to the report. She is an advisor to Scottish Government. We're incredibly lucky to have these kind of people advising us. Absolutely fantastic. And I'd like to say, in the absence of Hannah, who actually now chairs the Equalities Advisory Panel, that I would like to commend this Public Sector Equality Duty report to the board. And I would really like to thank the fantastic hard work of all our staff, but I'd particularly like to thank Kate and Ollie. Well done.
Thank you, Fiona. Certainly a huge amount of work has gone into this. Derek Ross.
I would second that. I mean, congratulations to Kate and the staff who've put this together. There's a huge amount of work in it, and it's something that needs to be done, and we are an exemplar as a park. And I think we should give ourselves a pat on the back for that.
Thank you. Steve Micklewright.
Yeah, very similar remarks, actually. So, OK, you've got your statutory duties and that's what you do, but what you're demonstrating is values, culture and practice are changing. And that's absolutely remarkable work. So, yeah, thanks. It's really good to be part of something that's trying to take this seriously.
Thank you again. Jackie Brereton.
I would just echo what other colleagues have said, Kate. I wonder whether there's a way that we can cascade some of the good practice and examples and activity that are going on so that other organisations in the park can learn from it and perhaps gain some knowledge and understanding, because obviously every organisation is under an obligation to fulfil these equalities needs, but they don't have the resource or the expertise that the park area, the Park Authority has. So I'd welcome any workshops or something that we could do to spread the word.
Kate?
Thank you, Jackie. Yes, this document, as you notice, is a very bare document. We've chosen not to put imagery and charts and graphs, but I'm going to be working with the comms team over the forthcoming year, and we're going to do campaigns. They don't like me to use the word campaigns. We're going to do stories of the work that we're doing. But I think you make a very good point, and I think there is a piece here for me to work with Ollie to see how we can share those stories in such a way that our partner organisations, and certainly, you know, in the private sector who are not under the same obligations as we are, might be able to learn from and in a way that we can support them. So I will take that away and have a chat with my colleagues in the comms team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on the paper? None, thank you. Is the board content to note the report and Annex 1 and note the achievements in our work on equalities? Thank you very much. Thank you, Kate, for the paper, and to everyone involved in delivering the Park Authority's vision of being a park for all. We move on to item 11, paper 7, board committees' annual reports to the board. So the paper presents the annual report of the Governance Committee, Performance Committee, Resources Committee. Reports have been approved by members of the individual committees. It's for information, introduced by Marianne Peter, Executive Support Manager. Are there any questions? None. Is the board content to note the annual reports to the board from the Governance, Performance and Resources Committees? Thank you very much. Item 12, paper 8, minutes from committee meetings. Again, this is for information. Any points by exception? None. Is the board content to note the minutes of the Performance Committee, Audit and Risk Committee and the Resources Committee, and the confidential minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee and Resources Committee? Thank you very much. Item 12, any other competent business? None has been notified. Looking around the room. None. Thank you. Item 13, the date of the next formal board meeting is the 27th of June 2025. Thank you very much, members and staff. I've got
just to say the next formal board meeting is likely to be in Balter in June. So just for noting.
Yeah, and arrangements are still being made, almost in place for that. Looking forward to our visit to Deeside. So thank you, members, thank you, staff, and thank you, members of the public who've joined us online. Have a good weekend.